Hey guys, Mr. Palmer here. So it's been a while since I made a video, but now that we know that school is going to be out for a little bit, I thought it'd be kind of cool to incorporate some fun things into some of my lessons. And so today we are going to be combining art and science. Actually, art and science, fun fact, go together all the time, but that's a larger conversation that I can go on forever. So, um, today I am going to be showing you guys how to draw a pit bull, at least a pit bull face, and some cool tips and tricks that I've learned along the way, because I love animals, and I know you guys love animals, and I know at least two of you have a dog. I think another one of you has a cat, and obviously for HIPAA reasons, I can't call you guys out personally on that, but I was thinking about a dog named Athena when I came up with this lesson. So this should give you an idea as to what I was thinking about. So anyway, I love all art, as you guys know, and so I'm gonna help you out with some of this. So to start, I guess a tour. Welcome back to my living room. And as you can see, I do love art because that's my painting. And when I'm not teaching you guys, that's like what I'm doing is art. So in the classes coming up, I can keep you posted on wood burning, and I have some ceramic pieces in the work if you guys want to learn how to sculpt and use clay. And also, side note, the only other thing I do is I'm trying to keep some plants alive. So I'll take you with me through that if you guys want to have a green thumb and figure out how to keep a plant alive. I kind of do too. Still don't really know how to do it, so we'll see. But anyway, yeah, so like for the wood burnings, I'll show you one. This is just an example, guy. This was just a little egg. So that's that I was thinking about some nature and some flowers. So I have a set of these guys. So if you guys want to learn how to do some of that too, and we could talk about shading, shadows, and what those can do for an art piece. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So today we're going to be talking about drawing, and as I'm going along, I'm going to teach you some fun facts that Google has taught me about pit bulls. But first we're going to start with art. So I am drawing on, this is very large gray tone paper. I prefer gray tone, but honestly you could work with computer paper, you can draw in markers, you could do literally whatever you want. This is just what I had laying around, honestly, from my college days. So this is my favorite charcoal pencil ever, and there's a reason, because it's so much fun. You just pull the string. I'll pull the string a little bit. Pull. And then you're left with this like tear. So you open it and you twist and twist. See? And the paper comes right off. And then wha-bam! Charcoal stick. So that's kind of cool. And I also like working with, I have some, it's called vine charcoal. It makes a mess, so parents probably won't want to do that in the house, but it's good for shading. So I have just literally charcoal is just burnt stick. And so I have that. And then I also use an eraser. I have two different kinds. This one's, if you have a kneaded eraser, those are really great for little teeny tiny shading things, and also they're just like really fun to play with. And then I have a hard eraser, which I use to cut out some of my lines. And then finally, I have a white charcoal, and white charcoal is awesome. Now, usually I also have it's called a tortilla, which you use to blend stuff, and I don't apparently seem to have any. So, to improvise, I'll either be using my finger or a paper towel. That's a better idea. So I will go get some paper towel, and then we will begin. And the great thing about art is you can just be so creative about what you do and how you do it. There's literally no wrong answers. I had a professor once tell me that there are no mistakes, there are only opportunities in art. And it's so true. Anything can become an opportunity if you're just willing to get creative about it. So I don't know if you saw it, but I ripped my eraser in half because I wanted to have a nice fine line there. And so now we'll begin drawing our Pitbull. Well, and let's see, can I move my camera out of the way? I can. Oops, I messed up. Okay, let's try. Still getting used to this computer. Not even gonna lie to you. Snap left. And this is on the right. So we'll start with my first Pitbull fun fact that I learned. Did you know that pit bulls predate the United States? So the United States came to be the United States in, you guys remember? Okay, 1776. And the pit bulls predate that. They were bred in England and were brought to America by the settlers. So, yeah, pit bulls are as old as this country. That's crazy to think about. Okay, now, so that was my first Pitbull fun fact. And now I will start drawing my Pitbull. I wish you could see his face. He's just so happy. Alright, so to begin drawing, I'm going to actually do this so you can see what in the world I'm doing. Which, in theory, was a good idea, but I'm going to need the picture on my phone. Okay, so I'm going to pause this, reorient myself, and get back to you. Okie dokie, guys. So I got the picture on my phone so you could see it. Isn't it a happy Pitbull? Yeah. So that's the one that we're going to start on today. So when you start drawing, you want to measure out your dimensions. So this guy's head takes up most of the picture. So I'm just gonna, yep. Alright, so you can just like measure out whatever you want. Me, I take my 2 fingers and I measure his head. And then I go down from the top of his head to under his tongue. Measure on my phone, it's about yay big. And then go under the tongue to the bottom of the screen. So he's mainly head. So I'm just going to make a tick mark on my thing. And then down at the bottom. So if he's like, yeah, So I can actually do it in 3. Now what you'll see I just did was I made my tick marks with my darker charcoal. You don't want to do that because then it'll show up. So use your vine charcoal, or if you're using a pencil, don't really worry about it. So if that is mainly, his head. So I'm going to bring his head to here. And now the top of his head to the middle of his nose. If you can see that, is about 3. So 1, 2, 3. Just a little bit under that takes you to the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to go from the top of his head to under his nose. And that's going to be my first mark. Because his nose is about, the top of the head to the top of his nose. That's halfway through the picture. So I'm going to do another tick mark. Halfway through. Which brings my line to about here. So now, and I always go double check. But yep, his tongue is going to be right about there. And now if I do that same measurement to tongue, and then, so that same distance, it goes from here to here. And his feet will be down by my last tick mark. So now, I'll show you what I mean by all those tick marks. I don't know if you can see it. I hope so. I'm gonna turn my light on. I don't know if you can see it. Okay. So, probably can't see it yet. So I'm just gonna keep going. I don't know if that helps. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so now, as I'm going along doing this, I'll give you my next Pitbull Fun Fact. These dogs were bred to fight other dogs and animals, combining the strength of the English Bulldog with the gameness, which I guess is a real word, and it means fearful nature, of a terrier. So a pit bull is a combination of an English Bulldog and a terrier. Learned something new today. Okay, so now back to the art. So now we're going to take this little guy, and so if his nosy is here, and he's looking pretty straightforward at the camera, I'll take his nose, 1, 2, 3. And it's 3 noses to get to the bottom of his face. So 1, 2, 3. Which means his nose ends about here. And now it's kind of boring to do this part, but it's super important because by doing this, you're figuring out the dimensions of the rest of them. So he looks like the happy pupper that he is. So 2 noses down. Let's see about here. And the great part about using charcoal is it all eventually, you can erase it all with your finger as you're going. So halfway through that, you get to the top of his mouth, which is the utmost portion. And now, if we go the other way, his nose, one other nose up, gets you to just about the top of his eye. So that means if his eyes are going to be on either side, and then 1, 2 noses gets you to about the top of his head. Almost. So this becomes like a great unit of measurement just to see, how far off you are with anything. So I was a little bit off there. Great. Now my head is good. Now you just want to round it out. Now that you kind of have your measurements of where things are going down, well, almost. I almost forgot to do the bottom. So 1, 2, 3 gets you to underneath where his head is. So now from there, nose to the bottom. His paw is about the same dimensions as his nose. So I'll make a little mark down here So I can come back and take a look again. Now, so this again is my picture of what I'm doing. And I measured what it was going down. Now I need to go across. So if I take a measurement of this is his head, and I flip it, whoops, and I flip it going the other way, that'll tell you your width. Now usually heads are the same down as they are this way. And this pit bull is no exception. It's pretty close, just off by a little bit. So I'm going to take my drawing, and where my hands are is how wide it is. And I'm going to flip it this way. I'm going to make a line here and a line here, just as a basic unit of measurement. So now I'll show you where I'm at. And hopefully you can see it. I'm going to adjust the lighting in here in case you can't. So give me a sec. Okay, so I hope that helps you see it a little bit. So I have his face kind of marked out, and now I can start drawing. If I could stop dropping my stuff, that would be fantastic. Alrighty. So time for my third fun fact. Even in the early days, aggressiveness toward humans was an undesirable trait for these dogs, as human handlers often had to be in the fighting ring with them. So I guess what I learned from this is they have been doing that to pit bulls for a very long time, and that they didn't want them to be aggressive. Interesting. So since we know that this middle part is about halfway through his eyes, I'm gonna just mark it in. Because half his nose, so halfway through the nose, which I'm going to mark that too, is where his eyes start. His eyes are pretty close to his head. And now remember, they go up about where we made the middle of our mark. And his eyes are pretty close together. Now, a big mistake that people make when they're drawing is they'll start shading right away and doing that through their line work. And that is not the best way to go about it. Now, did I make his eyes too close? Let's see. Chip to the top of there. No. No, I did not. Okay. Let's check this one. Go all the way up. Now, this one needs to go scooch over a touch. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just drawn for fun. There's a little bit of an angle in his eye. Now, the pit bull is primarily looking at you full on, so I can add that in there too. And now that you pretty much have your measurements, now you can kind of start adding some stuff in. So I'm gonna just slightly outline where I believe his nose is gonna go, and halfway down there is about where his cheeks start. And he's a smiling guy, so you gotta have the smile lines in there. I don't have a dog, but someday I'd like one. Now this little guy has a nice coloration over his one eye. So we're gonna put that in there too. So I'm just kind of outlining about where his bones are going to go. Dog anatomy is a little obviously different than human anatomy, but some of the things are the same. Your what's under your eye is called your zygomatic bone, and that takes that's responsible for a lot of your characteristics. And the same is true with a pupper. So now his ears. We're just gonna draw them in a little bit. Pit bulls have little happy ears. Is there, this guy is just a happy doggo, just living his best life, doing what doggos do. Imagine he's somewhere picking up sticks or something, and or eating a nice bone. Just enjoying some nature. Alrighty. And now you see a little bit more of his face on this side, so I'm just gonna compensate for that a little. And we're gonna go underneath his eye and scooch on over. Alrighty. And his ears are pretty symmetrical, and we're gonna go down a little because you see a little more of the side of his face on this side than you do on the other. So now I'm just adding in. What I'm doing is I'm adding in where my shadows are gonna go. And this is important because people think it's lines that make your artwork look like your picture, but it's not. It's actually where you place your shadows. So I'm just kind of outlining where some of my major shadows are going to go. So then when I come back through and start shading, you can really see it. So now he has a nice shadow underneath his nose. So we're gonna include that. And then his nosy he's got a really cute one. Can't see all of it because it's a pretty dark one, but it's still cute. So now I'll hold this up and kind of show you. Well, you know what? I'm going to get his smile in first because he's a happy guy, and happy pit bulls, they're just cute. So I'm going to bring this up. His smile goes from to the end of his eye, pretty much, is when it starts popping up. So I'm going to erase that. And what I'm doing with my finger, what I just did was I erased one of my lines because I didn't like it. And I checked the corner of the mouth, goes right under the lip, which is pretty much where I eyeballed it. So now we're going to bring his tongue back around. We know his tongue takes up most of this lower part. Goes out from a little bit past the end of his nosy. So we're looking at something like this. And because the tongue on the other side goes up here, so it's pretty dead on accurate. Now we're gonna draw his nose, his little face up, and it stinks to there. Alrighty. And his tongue goes about here. Oh, see, and when you do the shadows right and you take the time to measure out, he already looks like a happy doggo. Perfect. You can see just a little bit of where his head comes up about here. And now is a great opportunity to talk to you guys about copyright. So I found this picture on the internet. I did not take a picture of it, or I did not take a picture of the pupper. I have no rights to the image. Now, why is that important? Well, you guys are young, so it doesn't really matter to you right now. But once you get older, especially if you continue doing art, you'll have to have a conversation about copyright issues. So if I were to just draw this doggo and then sell it, sell the drawing without citing whoever took the picture, I could get in trouble for copyright. So now that we're about here, I will lift it up and show you guys where I'm at. So this is my little Pitbull face. And as you can see, there are extra lines here because, like I said, I'm mapping in where some of my shadows are going to go. Because with any drawing you do, you're going to have a side that is lighter and a side that is darker. And the balance of both of those are going to help you create whatever it is you want to draw. So yeah, that's my little happy Pitbull face so far. Alrighty, which I guess means it's probably time for another Pitbull Fun Fact. So, pit bulls were often used in bear baiting, where I guess it helped them with hunting bears. Don't know how that worked. It's not a very good fact. It's actually a not very nice fact at all. So I guess we'll segue into the next fun fact. After bear baiting was outlawed in England because it was not a nice sport, they started a new sport called ratting, which was a pit filled with rats. Yucky. And they would see who could chase around all of the rats, and whoever won was the ultimate pit bull. And I guess that's where the term pit bull comes from. One more. In the old days, pit bulls found many uses on the farm, from hunting to protection, to help with the livestock. Ooh, and this next one's a good one, but we'll get back to some art for now. So, I got my pit bull face in a pretty good position. You know, he's looking like a happy pit bull. So, now, not really too worried about the rest of his body. Like, okay, at the top of his smile, mapping out the face is the hardest part because the face is the basic unit of measurement that you're going to use for pretty much everything. So, yeah, once you have that done, you're kind of golden. And the rest of the body can be done pretty easily. So at the top of his face up here, I made a little mistake because his ear goes down to there. And this part actually comes out to here because it's in relation to his eye and his zygomatic bone. And I made the same issue on this side. So this one, his ear, I didn't even draw it. It comes down to about here. There we go. Now he's looking a little more realistic. So now, maybe for simplicity's sake, yeah, I'll outline it. But, nah. I'll come back and I'll do the body later, maybe. So, so where we're at is we're going to have a light side and a shadow side, which I kind of talked about earlier. And there always is one in any three-dimensional object. So now I'm kind of going back and I'm reinforcing. So if you see this doggo's face, there we go. So this side is obviously dark. So I'm going to do mostly, very dark charcoal with that. It doesn't get any darker than that. But on this side, this is also, the lightest part is in the middle, where the shiny part of his forehead is, and here. And this is where the second darkest part is. So because of the paper that we're using, this is automatically what you call your middle tone. So everything else is filled in with super high, bright, and super low darks. So if this is going to be the middle of what I'm doing, then the easiest thing to do would be to start shading in that eye in that area, because that's the darkest. So I take my handy dandy thingamabob, and I'm just going to start filling it in with some of those darker points. Now, I love charcoal because, I mean, I'm just one of those people. When I was in college, I was always covered in it, and my roommates would laugh at me because it's very dirty, but it's just so much fun. Because I loved playing with chalk when I was your age, and sometimes you just never grow out of that love, and that is okay. So now I'm gonna kind of fill in where some of those shadows were. There was a pretty good shadow right by the Pitbull's eye. And now that one shadow goes down right up through here, right up to the top of the eye where there's actually another line. So that's always good to know, because it's these lines that help, like I said, establish where the Pitbull's face is. So there's a little shadow underneath his eye, which makes sense. And then over here, there's another line indicating the start of the, I don't know if dogs have a zygomatic bone. I already talked about this. I think they do. So we're gonna include a slant there. And this is the part where your drawing can start to look kind of cool, because you'll automatically start to see some forms and things emerging. So I have this line that goes up here. Now, it can be super easy to start getting really carried away with the charcoal. So you gotta make sure you rein it back. I have that issue. I'll like start going and I'll make it super dark. Now the ear is on the side of his head, so you're gonna show a little difference. And that's where your super darkest darks are gonna go, because the face is in front of the ear, so it stands forward a little bit. That in there like that. And it curls in, and there's a little bit of a space. And we're going to do the other side too. Alrighty. So it gets super fun when you're about here, because when I go to do the other side of the face, I will, no doubt, get charcoal on my hand. Because when you're drawing, I'm going to go over it like this and get charcoal all over my pinky. So that's always fantastic. So try to avoid it if you can. Alright, and now this Pitbull, his eye, his little bone comes up like this and over, and all this is filled in. So I'm gonna just fill that in, and then it kind of goes up and over to show the curve of his head. Now everything I'm doing, I can knock back with my, it's called a putty eraser, and I will as I go on. So, Alrighty. So now I'm just kind of shading that in, and now that this was like the darkest part, because this was the side of his head that was the that had the black over his eye. So now that that's kind of filled in, we now know for the rest of the drawing it's not going to get any darker than this side. So now I'm going to take this vine charcoal and come back and fill in a little bit underneath his eye, around here, because it's still darker than my middle tone, and you want to have that in there. So even when you knock back to where the highlight is on that side of the face, it's still not going to be any brighter than the middle of your paper. Okay. And it's like, oh no, I'm losing all this detail, but you're actually not. You just got to come back through with your eraser. And there might be a couple points where it's a super highlight, and we'll get to that. So that's that side. And now I'll pause it and fill in a little bit more, because this part's kind of tedious. And then I'll come back and show you right before I start adding some highlights. Okie dokie, guys. So I put in my darkest values. As you can see, ba-bam. Kind of a happy looking Pitbull still. But now you're starting to see some real depth. Like, okay, he has a tongue, and that goes farther back into his mouth. This was what I was talking about with the eye. It's because of this right here, this line, because when you smile, you have a line that goes up to your eye and follows along your cheekbone. Well, it's the same with animals, and so he has a line that goes like this, and so I had to show that. Otherwise, you might not understand that it's a dog that is happy as opposed to a dog that, I don't know, like, maybe your face is different when a puppy farts. I don't know. So you have to think of everything. So now we're going to start on the other side. And I filled in my darkest values, which are predominantly on this side of the face. So now for the other side, if there are some dark values, again, we're going with that middle tone. But for now, until we balance it out, you can use your vine charcoal, because it's still an indicator that it is dark, but not really. And you'll adjust it as you go. And so then I'll start adding some white highlights. So his nose, for instance, his nose is pretty dark, because puppies have a black nose, or at least this puppy does. So we're gonna blend that in. Oops, I forgot to lower my screen. You can see what I'm doing. So we're gonna blend that in. And there is a little highlight, but again, it's gonna go to middle tone. So we're gonna leave the highlights and kind of fill these in so the forms turn a little bit. And it doesn't have to be super, super clean. We're just sketching and having fun. And there is a shadow underneath here that's a little bit darker than middle tone. So we're going to fill that in. Oh, and he has a laugh. His mouth is open. So we're going to fill that in too. We're going to take some of these and just go over like this with some of these charcoals. Now they have charcoal pencils you can use. I don't have any. So I'm literally just using what I have. It's the quarantine special, we'll call it. So there's a little bit of a darkness under here, which goes under his chin. So that's that. And there's a couple of little lines, especially as you get over here, which accentuate his mouth area. And a couple more as you get up into his nose. And again, this is done with no blending because I can't find my tortilla. So I'm going to use my napkin. But I'm waiting on that because I want you to see how big of a difference it makes blending everything together. Because it really does. It makes a huge difference. So now just adding in some of those middle values. Because yes, that's what they're called, is middle values. It helps us kind of see his features. Which reminds me, I should probably do another fun Pitbull fact. So let me get this shadow in over here by his eye. Which I will definitely have to go back and rework in a minute because that is not turning the way I want it to. But this guy could go up here. And then that is a pretty decently shaded eye area. And all these values I can knock back. And this comes up here. Along the top. Okay, I gotta stop drawing and give you a Pitbull fun fact. So, next Pitbull fun fact. Pitbulls were considered to be so trustworthy with children, they were known as nursemaids or nanny dogs back in the day. Well, shoot. I did not know that. Ooh, this other one's a happy fact too. In addition to that, Pitbulls were also on the cover of Life magazine 3 times, which is more than any other dog. So that's cool. Alright, now that we're done with that, we're going to fill in a couple more of these medium values and then add the white. And that's where it really comes alive. So this guy, it's on the lighter side of the face. So when you do that, you see a little bit more of his eye. This is going to come out like this. You get around his facial muscle. Nah, I can't talk today. Facial muscles. Alright, that's a tongue twister and a half. Okie dokie. So now we have some of that. And this is the darkest part on this side of the face, is underneath his mouth. So I'm just gonna take my charcoal and blend it in up here along the side, because that's kind of important. And his tongue, he has some detail in that too. So I'm just gonna this. It's a little bit darker down through here. And then it is very dark under his chin area, which makes sense. Perfect. And then over here, it does come out a little bit, so we're going to add that as well. A little bit of some darker lines. Shade those in. So again, this part has no blending right now, which we're going to add. Alrighty. And this is the darkest part on up here. So I'm just going to push down on my vine charcoal and make that darker. And I made a terrible mistake underneath this poor little baby's eye. So I'm just going to fix that all up. Because when you do too much there, he loses a little bit of his qualities. So now better. There we go. So now I'll hold it up one more time with what I just did before I add in some light values. So see, he's a happy pupper right now. So he's got his little dark patch over here, and his tongue has some detail. And now we're just going up in here and giving him, we gave him a little bit here, but now you can clearly see that he's smiling and what side of the face is what. And this is the fun part. This is where I believe it always comes alive, is when you start adding some of your white charcoal in there. So, again, pulling out the phone. Oops. It would be super helpful if I typed in the right code. Alright, so he's got a highlight up here at the top of his eye. Now the thing about using the white is you have to use it sparingly. Otherwise it all just kind of goes together. So he's got a little bit of a highlight up here. It goes over into his eye area. He's got a highlight over here. And that one kind of goes across his face. Now the other bright parts are, there's a bright part right over here and under there. On his nosy nose, there's a little bit. There, just a touch. And that's like all you need. You don't need a lot with this white, because when you start blending, you will be surprised at how a little goes a long way. And if you do too much, then people, everything looks like it's super up close. And you lose some of that definition that we've been building, which is not what we want, because that bright white should be over the brightest parts and those parts only. So we're going to go up here. Dogs and people always usually have a little bit of a reflection in one of the eyes. So I'm going to put a little bit of a hint of that in there too. That, I may not even need the white for what I just did there. I may just knock back some of my shadows. And now we got some white there. And adding a little bit of white up here. Now, there is a lot of white on this side of the face, because this was where our lighter side was. So we're going to add a little bit of white under here, which contrasts against some of my darker shadows and values I've put in, which is good. That's what we want to do. because the more you have the whites right next to the darks, the more the form is going to look, or the doggy in this case, is going to look like he's turning and look real instead of a cartoon that was drawn. So we have that, and we're going to add a little bit of some white up around his ear area. Alrighty. So I'll show you, but it'll be like, well, that looks kind of messy, because again, I haven't blended anything yet. But I will start blending in a second. I'm just going to put a little bit of lightness around his eye. Not much, because there's not much, but just a little bit. There's a transitional value in that eye. And there is around this one too. And then you just start doing the charcoal dance. And the charcoal dance is just back and forth. Adding values, subtracting values. But the majority of the steps are kind of in what I just showed you, with the exception of blending, which I'm going to do next. And now there's a little bit of a brighter value through here, so we're going to accentuate that too. And of course around his tongue. It's probably wet because he's been a happy dog and he's just like probably panting because it's warm out. Speaking of it being warm out, I don't know if you guys did anything fun for Memorial Day weekend, but I certainly hope you did. Alright, so I can see right away some values I need to go back and change, but now that you started to add some white, like, can you see how much his face is just popping? And that's a pretty cool thing when that happens. So that's where we're at for now, which means it's time for another fun Pitbull fact. So Pitbull puppies often have wrinkly foreheads. As the dog grows, the skin stretches out and becomes smooth. Huh, that's interesting. Another fun fact. It's believed that there are at least 2 million pit bulls in the United States. So that's awesome. Didn't know that. Alright, so now I'm going to take my paper towel, which is super not what they teach you in art school, but it's what I have to work with. And I'm going to rip it and roll it. And then kind of use it like a sponge. I'm just going to shade it like that. And if I need a finer point, I will get a finer point. So now I'm just going to go through with this and blend some of my values together to show where there might be some shadows. And this helps the tones look a little bit more realistic. And it will elevate your drawing to the next level. Now, because I'm using paper towel, it's not going to transition super well. So I'm probably going to roll another one and try again and keep doing this back and forth. So we had a nice transitional value up here that we want to keep. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to go up and over. There was a transition up here, so we're just gonna, and this is the part where it's kind of like painting. Because as you go along with your values, you know, you may pick your paper towel up a little bit. Smooth it this way. And then I can come back through with my eraser and add some final values. And that's always super cool. So but it just blends everything so it looks like how you may see it if it was a photograph. So we're going to get that value in. And now this is his mouth. So there's obviously some lighter values. So I'm going to want to make it a little bit darker up here, closer to his tongue. I'm going to have to go back and refix that. It's the first thing that popped out to me. And as you shade, you can do this. Go the opposite way of what I did. And then that makes the tongue pop forward a little bit. And it looks a little bit more real. I'm going to just gently dab up his little nosy. So you can get some lines up there. I'm going to go around his eye like that too. Again, that's where you'll see a lot of those turning values. There we go. That's a little bit better. Now we got a pretty deep transitional value over here, which I'm not getting. So I'm just going to add a little bit more through here. Which is fine. I'm just going to have to offset it with some white. And I will show you this. This part takes like no time. The hardest part is the part we already did, which honestly is measuring. It's the least fun part. But then after this, like, it's just where you can have fun and play with charcoal and make things kind of come alive. So I will stop in a minute to show you where I'm at and also kind of discuss some of those transitional values I was talking about, because shading is cool, but this is where a lot of that definition is lost. So then you got to go back through. So like I have some shading under here, and I'm just gonna move this along this part. And the darkest part is underneath the tongue because of those shadow shapes. So we're going to be sure to include that. Alrighty. So, and now I'm going to take the other side, because this side's super dark, this side's not, and I'll blend in some of those whites, and then I'll go back and start adding a little bit of that detail. Don't forget, your middle tones are important. So, I have some of these super nice whites, and those are great, but the middle tones are really what make this stand out. Because without them, it would just look like super bright and then super dark. And it's like, what is going on? I don't really know. So I'm definitely going to have to go back through with my eraser and then finesse some things a little bit. Alrighty. And we're just about done blending our... Oh, now see, I love it when things start to work, because then you can really see when you're doing it right, because things will just start to pop, and they pop very well. So his nose really started to pop pretty well. His tongue isn't that bad either, actually. So I will show you and give you another Pitbull Fun Fact. And then we'll go through and I'll just clean it up. So see, his nose is really starting to come forward, which is I think the part I'm most happy with at the moment. His tongue, it's starting to come forward too, but because of the brightness here and up here, which are the brightest parts of the drawing, you can really see like that must be the super highlight, that's a super highlight, and it helps things kind of like come back and go forward, so it looks more like a photograph than it does a drawing. But when you get up close, there's a lot of lines and blurred stuff that needs to be fixed. So I lost a lot of definition. So I don't know if you can see that, but I'm hoping so. And so now I will pause it because you've already seen this part. I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut through with my eraser. And, oh wait, you know what? I will show you some of this part because this part's kind of cool. Because now you introduce the kneaded eraser, which you use a lot. So, but first, another Pitbull fun fact. So, due to their athletic build, pit bulls are some of the best fence climbers in the dog world. Something to keep in mind if you own one someday, because they may have good chance of getting over a fence. So, back to my pit bull. Alrighty, so there was some spots along his eye that needed some adjustment, and some over here too. There was a little bit of there's a shadow that I'm not getting with what I put down right now. So I'm going to take this eraser, and see how I'm just like popping it like this? That helps get a shadow so you can see the lines underneath it a little bit better. Which I think is super cool. Yeah, here it's just a little bit, it's close, but there's some transitional values that are just missing. And so now when I go back with my eraser and I add them in, it's going to make his whole side of his face pop a little bit more, because now there's some values where before there really wasn't. And up here too should be some more values. Here it gets a little bit darker. And I'm erasing some of this white because there's a transitional shadow there for the side of the pupper's head. So, whoops. Alrighty, and then that goes up the side of his head. And because of this shadow down by his eye, we're going to bring this one up too. I love it. It's like making it darker, but you're using an eraser. But because we're using a middle tone, it makes more values there. Which is just a cool concept. It took me a long time to wrap my head around. Alright, so I'm going to take this eraser and I erased a little bit much for what I wanted. But because of this shadow that I have, I actually wanted to fill it in with a lighter charcoal and then hit it with just a hint of white. Erase it around there. Okay. And again, because of that transition shadow, I'm just going to do a hint down here to show the side of the pupper's eye and up through here. Sorry guys, that would be my cell phone. Okay. And so now that you've kind of gone through and you've blended, by going back over it with the charcoal that you have, it's going to make things go from being super smooth to highlighting just a couple of things, which really bring your drawing into focus. So I will do that and stop bothering you for a second. And I will come back and show you where I'm at in a couple minutes. Hey guys, so I'm like just about done with this pupper. I could go on for hours doing this. I kid you not. So I'm just going back and carving back a last couple of things, and then we'll be good. So if you guys have any questions on this, like let me know when I talk to you next, because I'll be calling. I just thought it might be something fun and a good way to get some creative juices flowing. Because I don't know about you guys, but being stuck in quarantine, I need some fun things to do. And I've been doing a lot of art. Because why not? I'm just about done. Just going back and filling through a couple of things. An important thing to remember when shading around the eyes, you always want to leave it a little bit darker, because your eyes go back in space. So it helps make it look a little bit more realistic. You can embellish a little bit. Alrighty. Over here, just a little highlight. There's shadow, excuse me, wrong one. And his eye goes down like that. And a harsh shadow, followed by another harsher shadow. Yeah. I'd say this guy, like I said, could go on forever doing this kind of a thing. But if you have any questions, let me know, and I would be happy to share with you. And if you have any suggestions for anything else you want me to like draw or paint, I forgot we could also do a painting thing if you guys are into that. Yeah, that's a happy doggo. Alrighty, so I guess I'll show you. So again, not perfect if you were doing a whatever, if you were in, I guess you're not in college, so I guess I won't say that. But you could basically go and keep going until you're personally satisfied with it. If I were doing this for somebody, I would probably go a little bit more, make it look a little more cleaned up. He's a little messy looking, but see, I got charcoal. Actually, I didn't do that bad. I have a little bit on that hand and over here, But all in all, not too shabby considering where I could be. And here's your happy pupper. And a text message. Sorry, guys. So, yeah, this is my happy pupper. So, there he be. Happy little doggy. And if you have any questions, get a hold of me. And if you do get into charcoal, grab some hairspray when you're done with it. And